Thank you, John. Thank you, Poppy. Hello, everyone. I am Kate Baldwin. The president is facing a moment of truth on the global stage. Will he stay or will he go? When it comes to climate change, two senior government officials now tell CNN that the president plans to walk away from the Paris Accord and the nearly 200 nations that have signed on. The president is still building up suspense, though, to his big moment, tweeting this just a short time ago. We'll show it to you. I will be announcing my decision on the Paris Accord over the next few days. Make America great again. Pulling out of the Paris Agreement would mean a campaign promise fulfilled, yes, but it would also mark a major break from most of the world when it comes to dealing with climate change, and another major break from the Obama administration. So where do things stand right now? Let's get over to the White House. CNN's Joe Johns is at the White House following all of this. So, Joe, what are you hearing right now?
Well, this has been a very hard-fought decision here at the White House, Kate, and there have been people all over the place on this issue, and we picked up information just last weekend that the president apparently had made this decision, though it wasn't confirmed through sources in a reportable fashion until today. And we also have to caution that, according to sources, the president could change his mind, and he's been known to do that even after issues get floated in public, sometimes by his communication shop. So there's that caveat. The way it breaks down here at the White House has been very complicated. Steve Bannon, one of the president's key advisors, very much wanted the president to pull out of the Paris Accord and fulfill the campaign promise that he made, because the president had always argued it was bad for business. Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, had encouraged the president to look very carefully at every angle. Jared Kushner, we're told, was neutral on the issue. The Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, was one of the people who did not want the president to pull the United States out of the Paris Accord. So big question, of course, in the long term is how he does it, whether he does it slow or fast, and that could make a lot of difference to how other nations view it. Kate, back to you.
Yeah, how he announces it, what method they decide to take, and what exactly the president is going to announce. But it is leaking out drip by drip right now, at least where the president is leaning at this hour at 11:02. Great to see you, Joe. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. So what is the impact if the president of the United States withdraws from the Paris climate deal? It's a big deal, and there's someone who knows a lot about it. CNN digital columnist John Sutter. You spent years writing and reporting about climate change. John, this is your moment, so you need to educate us. For those folks who kind of just know it as the Paris climate deal and maybe haven't jumped into it, what is in the agreement?
So the Paris Agreement is really the guiding sort of North Star for the world on the issue of climate change. And it sets this one really specific goal, which is that we don't want warming to increase more than 2 degrees Celsius. And that sounds sort of wonky and abstract, but it basically means an end to the fossil fuel era sometime this century. So it's more of a goal and a promise to the world and a promise to future generations than an exact roadmap of how that happens. I've seen the Paris Agreement described as almost like a potluck dinner. So each country brings its own plan to the table for how it's going to reduce pollution, but they're all, all the parties to the agreement are saying it is our shared goal and shared purpose to limit warming below 2 degrees Celsius and avoid sort of the very most catastrophic impacts of climate change. Things like rising seas, drowned coastal cities, mass extinction in the animal world. It's serious stuff.
So how binding is it? Because I've kind of heard from a lot of folks that it's not so binding, it's voluntary.
It is a binding agreement in its whole, but the actual those plans that all the countries brought forward, those are not legally binding. So there were a lot of people who were saying that the Trump administration really wouldn't have anything to lose by staying in this agreement. They could pursue whatever energy policies they wanted. On the one hand, stay part of the Paris Agreement, not meet the pledges that President Obama made as part of the Paris process, and that they wouldn't be slapped a fine, for example, because of that. It's sort of like a good faith agreement. It does have, particular measures for re-upping commitments over time, or at least reissuing them. It's basically trying to get all of these countries to work together towards ending the fossil fuel era slowly and over time. But it was palatable as an agreement to the global community, in part because it didn't have these fines and levies for people that backtracked on the agreement.
A potluck dinner, and quite a big one. Great to see you, John. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We're leaning on you heavily as we continue to cover this. Let's discuss the politics of this, though, which are heavy and everywhere. CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash is here, and CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large, of course, Chris Cillizza is here as well. So, guys, on this, Dana, Joe Johns, he said it really well. They've kind of been all over the place on this when you look at the White House. I mean, there has been a whole lot of lead-up to this decision, warring factions within the White House on the agreement, even leaks of the factions are meeting to discuss where they stand on the agreement for weeks. What do you think this came down to?
If I were to guess, and I think this is an educated guess, it is the fact that at the end of the day, President Trump, my understanding from sources, asks one important question, which is, are we doing something that would make the people who sent me here happy? The base, the Trump supporters at their core. And at the end of the day, he tends to err on the side of, I want to make sure that we dance with the people who brought me here. And it is so true that this has been the most intense debate inside the White House up to date, because, and it's obvious because it's been delayed so many times, right, and there have been very big differences. I mean, on the one hand, you do have those who, never mind the issue of climate change, just opposed to the idea of the U.S. being involved in such an international agreement, those who want to look inward and don't want to be tied up with other countries like that, and that could affect this country economically. And on the other side, you of course have people like his daughter, Ivanka Trump, who has been kind of, particularly before her father ran for president, and even at the beginning of the administration and transition, very open about the fact that she wanted to help push her father towards the more climate change position, the position that would have kept him in the Paris Agreement. That didn't win out.
Yeah, so Chris, I mean, when it comes down to it, does that mean the Ivanka Trump, the Gary Cohn, the Rex Tillerson, the James Mattis of the White House, they lost?
Yes, candidly, but I think a lot of this, Kate, has to do with the fact that, Donald Trump listens to people, but then he just does what he wants to do at the end of the day. I mean, he takes in opinions, but I do think Dana's point is the most important one. He wants to make sure the people who got him elected are the people that he is thinking about first. Remember that image that we have of Steve Bannon's office in the White House, right? That whiteboard with all the campaign promises, and there are a lot of them, that Donald Trump made, and Steve Bannon crossing off the ones that he had accomplished, believing, the theory of the case being, well, in 4 years, if we can say we said we would do these things and we did them, that enough people will say Donald Trump affected change, I'm going to be for him. Well, assuming the reporting on this is right, well, I know the reporting on it is right, assuming Donald Trump doesn't change his mind, which is always possible, this is another thing that Steve Bannon can cross off that list, and that appears to be the sort of defining final decision-making thing that Donald Trump latches onto. And I think you've seen that in a number of things. TPP, talk about building the wall, the Keystone Pipeline, a lot of these major decisions where he's had, some back and forth, he's chosen to side with what he knows the base wants, exactly, what he promised on the campaign trail.
So, Dana, more broadly then, there are still big questions with this is included, is what is kind of going on within the White House right now. You've got continued rumors of a shakeup that's been happening for a while. Word that the president was going to be changing his Twitter practices, but clearly that did not happen as we saw overnight. And now, I was going to say Kofifi. We can fight that later. And now less on-camera briefings from the White House. More cabinet officials are going to be coming out to act as spokespeople. What does this all add up to mean?
That the people around Donald Trump are trying. Donald Trump understands that there are problems, big problems in the fact that they have been in a defensive crouch for the past, month or two, really since the sort of blip of what they certainly called success, which is the Obamacare repeal passing the House, and some other international stories. For the most part, they've been in that defensive crouch because of the steady stream of stories coming out about Russia and the involvement, and frankly, the fact that they haven't been forthcoming, and it's made it worse. So this is certainly there is an attempt to try to turn the ship. Look, you got to feel for these people who work in the White House, who understand what it takes to do it, but they're undermined when they have a president who has this impulse to tweet, whether it is something that is unintelligible. Obviously, it looked like he was trying to say coverage, but unintelligible at midnight. I mean, it just kind of goes to show, I think that is the ultimate illustration of how difficult it is for people in the White House, war room or not.
Yeah, I mean, and when you hear that line, I mean, well, first, Chris, is it Kofifi or Kofefe? I mean, whose team are you on?
I'm more of a Kofifi guy.
I feel like I can't decide if that's elitist or not. But I mean, I can't. I'll figure that one out later.
Hadn't thought of that.
I'm kidding. You write about this kind of hysteria, that this tells you everything you need to know about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Please, my friend, what exactly is that?
Dana touched on it, and I'll just make the point more broadly, which is that the President of the United States shouldn't be tweeting at 12:06 a.m. and then back up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. tweeting again. This is someone who has grown increasingly isolated in the White House, so I think he was isolated from the start. Remember, Donald Trump, basically, his inner circle has always been his family. Well, his two sons are theoretically walled off from him because of conflict of interest concerns. Ivanka and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, are members of the White House, but also are, establishing themselves in Washington. They have 3 young children. Melania Trump and Barron, his son, do not live in Washington at the moment, though they are moving. So he's always been someone who's isolated, but he's even more isolated now. What does he do? I always return to that New York Times piece by Maggie Haberman and Glenn Thrush a few months ago. The image of Donald Trump in his bathrobe, sort of puttering around his house, the White House, watching television and tweeting. Now, that's not dissimilar to the Chris Cillizza nightly plan, but I'm not the President of the United States.
You don't need that information, Chris.
That's a good point. TMI there. But the point is, this is the President of the United States. Dana's right. There are members of his staff who absolutely have told him, you should not tweet as much. You should put the phone down. Don't tweet every time you see something on cable you like or don't like. He doesn't listen. That's why all this talk about a staff shakeup. The problem with the White House right now has a name. Donald John Trump. It's not Sean Spicer. It's not Reince Priebus. It's not Steve Bannon. Those are all people around him. He is the central player here, and he doesn't want to change.
And that's why, while it is an unsatisfactory answer when it comes from the White House briefing room, the tweet speaks for itself is about as much
all they can say.
Sean Spicer can say most of the time when you think about all of this in context. Great to see you guys. Now I've got an image of Chris Cillizza in his bathrobe.
We cannot see that, Chris.
You cannot see it, but at least you were here with me, Dana. That's all I have to say. Thanks, guys. New reports that President Trump is giving world leaders his personal cell phone number, which could be a major security breach or a security risk at the very least. Former CIA operative joining me to discuss. Plus, a very awkward moment at the State Department. What stumped the State Department spokesman? What actually happened here? Got some insight. How he reacted, what the question was, what it means. We'll discuss that in a little bit. And breaking news, a man has been arrested inside the Trump International Hotel in Washington with 2 guns, 90 rounds of ammunition, this according to authorities. And we're getting word he may have been plotting something of an assassination. We have details coming in from police. That's ahead.